I will not keep you very long. It's rather warm this morning. But that heat is simply a matter of consciousness. So let's forget it for a few minutes and tackle this subject this morning, world's end. When? All that exists for you is your consciousness. You may look at it in any of the various ways, but it still resolves into that one fact, that all you have, the world to you, is your consciousness. And so let us remember that as we discuss this subject this morning. The world for you is a matter of consciousness. Now every night you leave this world, you leave this consciousness, and at death, you leave it permanently. That is, in a sense. Of course, you may come back through desire and once more take up your place in this world of consciousness. And so let us not forget that our world is to us simply a state of consciousness, a matter of consciousness. But of course there are two aspects to the question this morning about this world. When will it end? There is the physical aspect of this physical world and the world of consciousness. Now this physical world has been going on and on and on for a long, long time. And there have been cataclysms which have changed the surface of this earth, its face, and also there have been thousands and thousands of people who have been destroyed. But still, the world goes on and on. Now, if you want to know more about this subject, you consult the scientists, the geologists. They can tell you perhaps more about when this physical world will end. But I think we are not concerned so much about that as the second phase, your world of consciousness. That's what we're interested in, and that's what we want to know, according to the subject this morning, when that's going to end. When this worldly consciousness, this world of ours, is going to end. Now that end will come for you, for me, for each and every one of us, with the cessation of desires. And when the desires have ceased, it will be necessary for us not to come once more and be reborn here in worldly consciousness, in this consciousness of delusion, because that which is born must pass away. And so this world of worldly consciousness in which we are born will surely pass away, when we will come to in a few minutes. Now, we have in the Bible a very interesting illustration in Luke, the 18th chapter, the 29th and 30th verses. There we read, "There is no man that has left house, or parents, or brethren, or wife, or children, for the kingdom of God's sake, who shall not receive manifold more in this present time, and in the world to come life everlasting." And so you can see by that reference that there is something other than this worldly consciousness. There is another world, so to speak, another state of consciousness. But that state of consciousness always was and always will be. It never had a beginning, and therefore it will never end. As we stated, this consciousness, this worldly consciousness, began at birth, and it will continue until death. Or we might say, we'll have the if there. If you can, on this earth, contact that unchanging, that consciousness which always was and always will be, never had a birth and therefore never will have an end, if you can contact that here on earth, then the end of worldly consciousness will take place. And that is what we are interested in. In the Bhagavad Gita, we read words which may enlighten us on the subject in the 10th discourse, the 3rd line. He who knoweth me, unborn, beginningless, the great Lord of the world, he among mortals without delusion is liberated from all sin or ignorance. So that is the other world which I am preparing you to know about when we dispose of the present worldly consciousness. Yes, that world will pass away. This world will end. It will end at death unless you end it sooner. And you can just do that. You can contact that eternal consciousness of God, which is the other consciousness. And when you do end this world here now, that other consciousness will be yours. We have another line also in the 8th discourse, the 15th and 16th line, which might help us at this time. Having come to me, that is, having realized that other phase of consciousness within, by ending this worldly consciousness, having done that, these come not again to birth, the place of pain, non-eternal, they having gone to the highest bliss. The worlds beginning with the world of Brahma, they come and go. But, O Arjuna, he who cometh unto me, he knoweth birth no more. So perhaps the physical world, after eons of time, will once more pass into the great eternal substance of God. Who cares? What we're interested in now is this worldly consciousness, this world of ours, which is the only reality we have, this consciousness within us. So, going on once more to a reference or two in the Bible, as to the correct meaning of this worldly consciousness, we have many, many proofs in the Bible showing that the world means the consciousness which you have right here and now, this consciousness of worldly things and delusion. And I want to read. I want you to relax now and just take it easy and listen as I read one or two of these references as to the true meaning of world's end. There is so much confusion. People confuse the world of consciousness with the physical world, which may go on for ages. But what we are interested in is this consciousness which we have right now, this world of ours. And so, in 1 Corinthians, the 10th chapter, the 11th verse, we read these things. Now, all these things, that is, the lust after evil things and the penalties thereof, happened unto them as examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. That is, the world has ended for many people right now. And they look back and see and use these illustrations spoken of as examples showing how the world ends. The world has ended for many people because they have transformed their consciousness, replaced it by the eternal presence of God. And then also in 1 John, the 2nd chapter, the 17th verse, and the world passed away and the lust thereof. So you see, in the Bible we have references to what the world's end means. It means the end of worldly consciousness, the consciousness of delusion, the consciousness of change and uncertainty. Then he goes on to say, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. That is, it is a question of contacting God's presence. This worldly consciousness, this world of worldly consciousness, I call it, will pass away when it is superseded by the eternal consciousness of God. That's when the world will end. No other time. Your world is your consciousness. And when that consciousness of delusion ends, the world, as far as outward consciousness, is finished for you. But by your own efforts and the grace of God, you will have dynamic to your consciousness another world, so to speak, the eternal consciousness of God with its security and with its joy. And finally, the last reference, which is very significant, in Hebrews, the 9th chapter, the 26th verse. For then must he, and the he means Christ, or Christ's consciousness, for then must he often had suffered since the foundation of the world. There it speaks decidedly of that unchanging, permanent consciousness of God within us as the Christ consciousness, which has been there through the foundation of all worlds. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now, once in the end of the world, hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. There it distinctly refers to the fact that Jesus, at the crucifixion, the time that he was crucified, reached the end of worldly consciousness. And so this world's end means the end of worldly consciousness, not physical consciousness of the world, but our own consciousness within us. Now we come to the point of when. When is this world going to end? When is this world going to be finished for us? Once more, I want to read the last reference in the Bible. Very clearly it states when the world will end. When this worldly consciousness, which is our only reality, will be finished. I want you to listen carefully. In Isaiah, the 2nd chapter, the 17th verse. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of man shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. In that day is the key. That's when the world will end. On the coming of that day. It speaks many times in the Bible. You look through a concordance and you will see time after time in that day. And that day that means when the consciousness of Christ is predominant. That's when the world will end for you and for all of us. When that day comes. The loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low. In other words, the consciousness of delusion. This world of delusion passes away in that day, and that day means on the coming within you and within me of Christ's consciousness. That's when the world will end, no other time. It will end temporarily at death, but we have to come back and finish the job. Why not let us finish it now? Get rid of this unstable, worldly consciousness. Let it end. We don't want it. We've had enough of it. We're not interested in it anymore because we want something that does not change and does not pass away, the eternal consciousness of God. And so, the end of the world will come in that day spoken of in the Bible. And that day means when the consciousness of Christ is predominant. That's the day when the world will end. The duality of consciousness must go. It will be superseded by the Christ consciousness in that day, and the world for you and for me will end. And we'll be thankful and grateful that it does end. The desire for worldly things in that day must be replaced by something far greater and far nobler, and that will be the one desire to do the will of God. And so in that day, the end of the world will come, but it will be a good ending. It will be the end of delusion and ignorance for us. The world's end comes on the passing of delusion from our consciousness, and this takes place through the washing and the regeneration of the Holy Ghost. When that comes, when we receive that, that is the day in which Christ consciousness will be predominant and the world will end. And so we are interested, as I have said, in the ending of this worldly consciousness. The world will go on, no doubt, on and on. This globe will go on revolving and revolving. But we are interested in the coming of the new day, in which our consciousness of delusion and uncertainty and disappointments and paradoxes will be replaced by the eternal consciousness of God, which is unchanging, beyond doubt, full of security and joy, and in which there is no fear. When that consciousness comes, the world of delusion will end.